Ready community, and we are working together to engage our partners, our parents, our schools, and our local communities for immediate and long-term benefits of our children. So what is the Ready community? Oh, my clicker. You want me to do it? No, I'll do it. She doesn't trust us. We've had some technical difficulties. So the session will showcase the Hillsborough County Public Schools Early Childhood Team and creating a Ready community. We work with our stakeholders, our partners, and most important with our families who help engage our children. So why is this important? We fuss about this. Well, we know in Hillsborough County that only 50% of our children come to us ready for kindergarten. And Lisa's going to talk a little bit more about that when she talks, but that's a concern. I think they talked about that this morning. So we want to work with the community to increase that awareness and to increase that kindergarten readiness. So in 2016, the superintendent knew that this was important. In order to get to his goal of graduation rates, he knew he had to start a little bit earlier. So he convened some amazing partners within Hillsborough County to talk about this. And we termed it the 2K Get in the Race, because we know how important those first 2,000 days of a baby's life are. And Dr. Murphy was talking this morning about the first 1,000 days where that brain development, all that important brain development is going on. Most of the children that come to Hillsborough County don't come to us until they're like kindergarten age. So we've missed, almost 1,000 days or more of those days. So we know we have to reach out into the community and to work with the community in order to have those children ready for kindergarten. And so that we need to establish relationships with other people in the community that are working with those children. That includes our private providers. So that from 2K Get in the Race came Teach Me Early Hillsborough, which was the panel that you heard this morning talk. So the goal is still there. We still know it's important. We just kind of changed our what our title is. And that focus, when we had that 2K Get in the Race, those objectives became kind of the objectives that we're working towards and kind of our presentation this afternoon. And one of those is obviously to increase accessibility to quality early childhood services, to increase the quality of inclusive early childhood education, to increase the awareness of high quality early childhood education, to engage families and make resources more readily available. They talked a lot about that this morning, and to facilitate a smooth transition to kindergarten. So first of all, the increasing access. We started with that. Our superintendent really charged us, and that was our biggest initiative, was to unite all of these early childhood programs under one umbrella, and that became our bold beginnings. And kind of our motto for that is to start strong and finish strong. And it's a AAA initiative where we talk about awareness, accessibility, and assistance to help our families in our community. So with bold beginnings, the superintendent charged us with opening some seats for our children, access, and we were able to open about 400 seats. The way we did that, our first task was by opening up the pre-K ESE programs to embrace an all-inclusive model, which Dr. Manwaring will talk about some more. But this was where we could bring together 4-year-old children so they became models for each other. So it was very amazing partnership between those two 4-year-old groups. We also developed a website. We kind of want it to be a one-stop shopping for parents so they don't have to search and find. Lisa's going to share a little bit more about that later on. And we talked about uniting all of our programs, so our Head Start, our Pre-K ESE, our Pre-K, our VPK, and our school readiness programs under one umbrella, and also about a smooth transition to kindergarten. So that's kind of what my kind of focus has been on, this smooth transition to kindergarten. We kind of call it a community transition to kindergarten. So we really want to work with those private providers. We don't have all the children at Hillsborough County Public Schools, but there's many other programs out in the community. And so we want to engage them and start building those relationships with our really important stakeholders. So I am working with elementary schools, I'm working with private providers, and trying to do some really amazing things. So we are sharing trainings. We're opening up trainings to our private providers in our schools. We are sharing, we're having communities of practice where we talk about data as those children transition into our public schools. We know where those children are because we've had those relationships and we've had those conversations. We're also inviting our parents to family nights at different schools. So even if they're, we know that our private providers have these wonderful relationships with these families. Some of them they've had since they were born. And so they're the best partner to transition them into kindergarten and help us as we kind of hand off the baton and start to work with those families. So inviting our children from the private centers into our family nights at our elementary school helps to get them ready for kindergarten. And Lisa's going to talk a little bit more about registration, but I do have a plant in the audience. Terry Fernandez is the director of the Learning Center at St. John's. And you just want to share a minute about our meeting we had at Tampa Bay Boulevard Elementary?
Now I know why she set this meeting up. Talk about it. But we had it a week ago,
Yes.
last Thursday. And
Thank you.
And it went really well. Every kindergarten teacher at Tampa Bay Elementary showed up, which was a big surprise. And we all sat in the little seats in the classroom. Another big surprise. No. Anyway, we had about an hour-long meeting or longer at the end of the day, and it was an amazing the way it turned out. They were very receptive of. I was with one other private provider that came who has children that go to that school. And we talked a lot about what we can do on our end to get the kids ready for kindergarten, because we're doing all the assessments we're supposed to do. We're using the approved curriculum, and scores still aren't always the best, you know. And both the lady that was here and myself have had the same VDK teachers for at least 6 years or longer. So scores are really high before and they're not now. So are these kids really ready when they're coming to you? And it was interesting that most of them replied, that's really not, we want to have the social emotional skills are what they were most worried about. I don't know how many
shoe time.
Yeah, shoe time with a lady whose classroom we were sitting in. She goes, you know how many kids I have now at the end of the year and tie their shoes? Was it 5 out of 20 something? And that was a huge number for her. She thought that was great. And those children now tie everybody else's shoes. So expert shoe tires. But what I liked was, what we came away with was, we always go and do a tour of the children of the kindergarten. So, and every child wants to go to that school after they do that tour, whether that's their neighborhood school or not. But we can do more, like the family nights. We were invited for the first time to what their next family night is. And we've invited those teachers to come to our programs. We really want them to see our programs and share. And we'd love to see the assessments that we're doing actually matter. We give them to parents at the end of the year, and I think they throw them away. So we want those teachers to be asking for them, so that we're both working on the same goal, getting these kids ready.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. And I will turn it over to
Great. Thank you. Okay, my role today is to talk about increasing opportunities, and what an opportunity was for pre-K ESE when the superintendent decided that adding 400 pre-K seats was really an important thing to do. But let me back up just a little before we talk about that and talk about the journey of inclusion that we've had here in Hillsborough County. When I first landed here, we had pre-K ESE classes, but they were all self-contained segregated classrooms identified by disability. And there were probably about 100 at that time, and the children may or may not have had a little bit of inclusive opportunity with some typically developing peers, sometimes some community children or some teachers' children might be included in one of the classrooms. There was only 1 or 2 peers, and it really didn't meet the definition of inclusion. But it still was a good model. It was a great model for the children who were typically developing, because they had an opportunity to show off their skills and to help the other children. And it was, of course, good for our children with disabilities, because then they had a role model, a language model, someone who could share skills with them. So we knew we had to make some changes. IDEA said that inclusion is defined by a 50-50 ratio. Well, we had a long way to go if all of our classes were fully self-contained. And the ratio is half, of course, half typically developing and half pre-K ESE. How are we going to do that? What can we possibly do to make that happen? And first of all, we had to impact the philosophical belief of not only gen educators, but special educators. And I'll tell on myself, I absolutely believed as a pre-K ESE teacher that I was the only one who could teach the children. Nobody else can do what I can do with these very special children. And this is confirmed a lot by all of us in our greater communities. We're like, oh, you are such an angel. I don't know how you do this all day long. And I'm thinking, I don't know about you, but I'm having a great time. I'm having a lot of fun. So So after a few years, I began to think, I need to spread this idea a little, and share some thoughts about inclusion with my colleagues who indeed said, absolutely, we should begin to think about inclusion. And I want to share with you some inclusion research. I think it's really important for you to know, and I'm going to read these because I don't want to misquote, but these are from the brief survey fact sheet of research on preschool inclusion in the Preschool Inclusion Toolbox by Erin Barton and Barbara Smith. And it's important for us to keep this in mind because this is why IDEA and the state ultimately said we had to move towards more inclusive practices. In 2015, in 27 years of early childhood education across our nation, the practice of including children with disabilities in regular early childhood settings increased by 5.7%. 27 years, and we didn't think our children should be together. So my message really is that we need to teach all children, and I think we've heard that all day today. Also, children with disabilities can be effectively educated in inclusive programs using individualized, embedded, specialized instruction related to the early learning standards, and all of us can do that. Every teacher in every classroom. Inclusion is not more expensive. Successful inclusion requires intentional and effective collaboration and teaming. And finally, children with disabilities do not need to be ready to be included. Programs need to be ready to support all children. So we began to really work together. I mean, we always did work together, but we became more focused in how we were going to identify and move towards inclusive opportunities. So 3 things that we do regularly now. We meet as supervisors to brainstorm and to problem solve. We develop blended models of service delivery, and we co-located our early childhood programs so that teachers can plan together, so that they can feel like they're doing the same work for all of the children. I think that's really important for us to embrace. Yeah. No, do the other one first. Yes, thank you. Okay, so, first of all, you should also know that we have moved a little bit towards inclusion in the 1990s. We really were right out there in front. We had one pre-K ESE teacher going out into what is known as the Board of County Commissioners Head Start classes, and she was pushing in collaborative service, ESE services to children identified by Child Find and who had IEPs. And it was very successful. The Board of County Commissioner Head Start classrooms embraced Miss Rose. They just loved her. She was great. And so that was so successful that we decided to create a memorandum of understanding with a single school, St. John's, and we were able to hire another teacher. So now we had 2, and this teacher was assigned to St. John's for a whole year to support the children who had IEPs at St. John's. And it was fabulous. St. John's was wonderful. They were so collaborative. Our teacher had a space. But the next year, there were no children with disabilities at St. John's. So we couldn't leave the teacher with no children to teach. So we had to spread her out amongst the community. And I think we still, over the years, have been back and forth into St. John's when we've had children. But we now, in 2020, in the fall, we've grown to 8, and next year we get to add 1 more. We will have 9 community pre-K ESE teachers in the community serving more than 250 children. And we hope, it's a weekly service. We're hoping that we can grow that so that we can serve even children with more challenging needs. Right now, these are mostly identified as mild children, although that's not always true. But it'd be really nice to be able to spend a whole morning in a child care center as opposed to just going for an hour a week, to really have that full collaboration. It is a push-in model where they collaborate and they work in the classroom. We do not pull out into a self-contained or a smaller little classroom. And that was the way it was a very long time ago. The private providers and preschool teachers have been so embracing. We will go anywhere that the parent has identified as the place they want their child to be. And there are very few, and it usually is a policy decision of a child care center or a preschool when it doesn't work out, but that's very rare. Okay. Now, as I said, we started working together in 2009, and even before that, there were a few early intervention programs where we mixed children, and we tried some different ways to get those blended classrooms, but we never got any traction. But in 2009, we opened with 9 classrooms, and those classrooms were spread out across the district, and they were defined as 8 children who were using their VPK voucher and 8 children with IEPs, and they're staffed by a single teacher and 2 paraprofessionals. It turned out to be a hugely popular model, and some of you in here experienced it already because either you've had children there or they're on your school campuses. And now this year, we are so excited to announce that, and part of it is because we were able to add 400 seats, and because we're all embracing inclusion, we will now be, between our 200 classes, we will be 50% inclusive classrooms starting in 2020. I know, yay! It's been a journey, but it's so exciting. So I just also want to share just a little bit about some of the things that we do. We certainly espouse NACE and DEC, the Division of Early Childhood of the Council of Exceptional Children. We embrace early learning standards. That's the foundation of our teachers' work. But we also use something called the pyramid model practices and conscious discipline, and prevent, teach, reinforce, which helps our teachers get a handle on some of that challenging behavior that I know all of you know is out there. And we've trained across all of our programs to use that. We also are working on peer-mediated strategies to help the children help each other, more than just modeling, so that they actually are interacting and becoming true friends of each other, because that's important to us. And finally, family engagement. We spend a lot of time trying to engage with families. We send daily home notes, we have conference, we have family nights at our schools. We also are in our communities CP classes, well actually all of them. Our teachers will also, if a family has a private therapist or the child goes to a child care center, we invite those people to join us for individual education plan meetings so that they can be a part of everything surrounding the child, all the supports about the child, so that everyone makes a good team decision about what the child might need. Last one. And then finally, professional development. We now share access to resources. We share something that's called a conference area on our internal email system. So all teachers across our 300 classrooms have this fabulous resource with a single click, and it has everything they might ever need or want to know about early childhood. And we also have placed a number of resources in another area called Office 365, which is a little more interactive too. We're getting ready to roll out coaching for all of our teachers. We've developed communities of practice, and they also span across our programs. And for the second year in a row, we are going to have a joint professional study day, which includes all of our paraprofessionals and all 300 teachers. So it's about 500 people all together learning about early childhood. And also we are going to hopefully do more with private providers.
So we know in order to improve high quality early childhood education, it's important that we review the literature and familiarize ourselves with evidence-based practices to gain knowledge of the most appropriate assessment, instructional practices, and interventions for our young children. So we are very fortunate to have several nearby universities and community partners to continue to grow in our understanding of best practices and continue our journey being lifelong learners. It's so exciting to be able to work with these people and continue to solve problems of practice together. So our entire team has had the opportunity to work with Howard Goldstein on a partnership grant that looked at the implementation of multi-tiered systems of support in early childhood. And for those that are not familiar with MTSS, this is an evidence-based framework that uses data-based problem solving to integrate instruction, assessment, and intervention to meet the academic, behavioral, and social emotional needs of all students. And Dr. Goldstein has since continued his work since that grant ended on 2 other grant projects with our district. He has one project where he works with our VPK classrooms on a vocabulary intervention, and then another project that's an early literacy professional development grant, and in that project teachers have the opportunity to use an electronic data management system that inputs their data and helps them make some problem solving decisions through just the technology. They also have the opportunity to access professional development modules related to early literacy, and for the students in their classroom demonstrating a need, they've been provided with an intervention that targets alphabet knowledge and phonological awareness skills. And in addition to working in our district classrooms, he also works in the classrooms of our private providers. Dr. Jason Anthony is working on developing a curriculum-based measurement system. He has already normed his literacy and language assessments, but now is working on his science and mathematics assessments. And the wonderful thing about this measure is that it's available in both English and Spanish, and it starts at the age of 3 years old and then goes all the way through kindergarten. Dr. Elbaum from the University of Miami has been working with our exceptional student education department, and she has looked at measuring correlations between 2 of the assessments that we administer to our students receiving ESE services. The first one being the Battelle Developmental Inventory, that's given to all children upon entry and exit. And the second being Teaching Strategies Goal, which is an ongoing progress monitoring tool that we use. And so far the correlations have been high from the preliminary data that we've been given, so that shows us that there is a strong relationship between both of these assessments that we're using. We also have the pleasure of preparing our future early childhood educators through 2 different ways. The first being a course that's offered at the University of South Florida, and that is a research and community settings course, and that is taught by Dr. Trina Spencer, and so she has her students from her class going into our Head Start classrooms and having that opportunity to engage with the teachers and students. And then in addition to that, we also work with Dr. Sophia Hahn, and she sends interns into our classrooms, so we're really fortunate to build up our future early childhood educators. And then, last but certainly not least, since Chef is right here in our audience, we get to engage with him on a community pilot called Growing Up Great in Town and Country. And Mr. Chef Crowder is the president of the Kong Foundation, and this is a collaborative partnership between Morgan Woods Elementary, Town and Country Elementary, 2 private providers, the Children's Nest in La Petite, and Champions for Children, and the Boys and Girls Club of Tampa Bay. And it's designed to build neighborhood-focused educational pathways from birth through 12th grade. And the main areas of focus are kindergarten readiness, 3rd grade reading, and long-term student success. And we're really hoping that we can take what we're learning from this pilot to be able to scale it up across our county. So we know that improving early childhood outcomes, it's important for us to become a district community, a preschool through 12th grade district community. And so we're really working hard on continuous collaboration with our site-based administrators along with our district level administrators. And we've really encouraged principals and assistant principals to make early childhood a priority on their campuses and involve their preschool teachers in all site-based activities. So this includes their quarterly data reviews, so just like kindergarten and 5th grade teachers get to come in and talk with their administrator about the students in their classroom, we want the same thing for our preschool students, to be able to engage in some problem-solving discussions and then also decide what supports are needed to provide, interventions or enrichment for these students. And then we also, want teachers attending faculty meetings. We want them engaging in professional development. We have formed a principal advisory group, which Mr. Murphy heads up, and an assistant principal advisory group, which his assistant principal, Amanda Sorio, has spearheaded. And these advisory groups work collaboratively with our early childhood team and the teaching and learning department so that we can engage in ongoing communication and continuous problem solving so that we can continue to unify all of our early childhood programs and review policies and procedures, types of supports that are needed at the school sites so that they can achieve their goals, but then also be within that context of our early childhood department's vision. An early childhood spotlight section has been added to our principal weekly that is sent out to all of our administrators, and these entries are developed based on some feedback that we obtained from a survey that was sent out to all of our school site administrators at the beginning of the year. And then the early childhood team all works together on developing the materials, and sometimes in collaboration with our site-based admin or teaching and learning, that we put in that newsletter. We have also worked on developing some common instructional tools and resources. And so now, though, I'm going to play a brief video of some of our school site administrators so that they can tell you more about their involvement with pre-K on their campus.
So we often look.
Last year, we started to make sure that we included our Head Start and pre-K classes in our quarterly data chats like we do with our kindergarten through 5th grade classes. We also invited them to MTSS meetings with our support team. And this year we've made sure that they are being accountable with monthly PLCs. We've also made sure that we've gotten in touch with all of our community VPK centers that our students are at that come here for kindergarten. And we have invited them to trainings with our kindergarten teachers as well as our pre-K teachers.
And we were able to do a pilot in collaboration with Head Start, VPK, and PEEPS in order to really try to unify all three programs and just really build a community of collaboration between sites and those programs.
And I really leaned on the expertise of the pre-K team to teach me about their needs, the needs of the students and the families, as well as me being able to better support them. I've allocated funding, I've made sure that professional development, coaching, and a lot of our job embedded PD and growth and development is also geared towards the pre-K team.
I am currently on the AP Pre-K Council and have presented at our monthly AP meetings. I also have attended the VPK standards training, and now I'm able to have a more informed and impactful discussion with our own pre-K teachers.
In order to improve outcomes in pre-K, we started by developing some resources that would allow teachers to align their instruction to the standards. We also developed some data sheets together that would allow students to be able to have their progress tracked towards these standards. We also collaborated as a group to develop a pre-K progress report or report card that allows teachers to communicate progress to families and set goals for next quarter. Going forward as a group, together with early childhood and teaching and learning, we're going to continue to get on those AP meetings agendas and do further training.
Yeah, early childhood is very important for us to start early, just like in sports or the arts. Students playing music, different instruments. The earlier they start, the stronger they are as they get older. And I truly believe if we do the same thing in early childhood, we will have improved and more equipped students when they get to the intermediate grade and middle and high school.
So I've been really fortunate to work with all of these administrators, and then there's also several other wonderful administrators that have engaged in this work this year that are here amongst you today. Throughout the video, we referred to some of these instructional resources and tools that we've really worked hard as a district community all together. Our early childhood team, the assistant principal advisory group, and our teaching and learning department to develop some tools that help to bring that consistent piece that's sometimes missing between preschool and then kindergarten through 5th grade. So I just have a couple of examples of some of the tools up there for you to take a look at, and we're happy to provide you with any copies of these. And the first one is the pre-K end of the program goals. So we took the 5 key content domains: social emotional, language, emergent reading, writing, and mathematical thinking. And we came to an expert consensus so that we could use that to determine the standards that would target the areas that would prepare our students for success in kindergarten. We've also, we're working through developing an informal assessment to allow teachers to collect the data so that they can put that in their data sheet and really engage with your administrators in these conversations to continue to move forward with providing the highest quality instruction to the students. And then one of the most important pieces, which is the pink piece, is our progress report, because that's really helped us engage our families around what they can do, because we know parents are their children's best teacher, and then that way the teacher can then communicate that information, because on the front reports student progress and sets goals, but then on the back that also is filled with information so parents know like what kind of letters and sounds to practice at home, what kind of a social emotional skill. It gives them different examples of activities that they can work on with their students.
Oh, sorry. No, that's all right. I like to lead. If you think back to the very beginning of the presentation, we talked about that statistic of 50% of the kids, if that, come to our district ready for kindergarten. And there's a couple things I want to mention about that. We want it to be better than that. We really, really want to be better than that. But it's not just us, it's Florida. It's the nation. It's a situation that's serious, and we need to address it. There's another thing is that, and I think Dr. Nicole talked about it a little bit this morning, about how there's different kinds of readiness. The readiness that we're referring to with that statistic is reading readiness. And that's an academic kind of readiness. And we even talked about it a little bit at the beginning of our presentation, how some of the teachers really value that social emotional readiness too. So that's a very important thing. We've got to look at the whole child. But it's that reading readiness that's going to get them to the graduation. And that's what we've got to beef up. And it's a huge task because we work tirelessly going to meetings and presentations and passing out some flyers here and some flyers there. Well, it's a huge community, 8th largest school district in the nation. To reach the community as a whole is a real challenge. And so it seems like awareness is a big deal. Us getting the word out to our families at every point in the district, make everyone aware kindergarten readiness is important, because a lot of people they know graduation is important, but do they think about kindergarten? Maybe not so much. We've got to let them know it's important. We've got to let them know what it means, what are the elements of it, and where are some resources to help them. It's all about awareness. So that's where the frog comes in. In case you didn't notice, there was a little frog on every single screen, and that would be Ready Freddy. And I'm even sporting Ready Freddy in my outfit today. Ready Freddy is something that we have embraced. I would like to tell you that I drew him myself, and right out of my head, and I'm so artistic. He's so darn cute. But I did not draw him. He was developed and trademarked by the University of Pittsburgh, their Office of Child Development, back in, and we launched him in February of this year, but the state of Florida has now embraced him too, so you're going to see things coming out from the Office of Early Learning statewide with Little Ready Freddy on it. So that's really cool to me, because then it won't just be us alone trying to fight the battle, but we'll have the state behind us. And we have tried to get him out, and we will continue. If you would wear your pin everywhere you go, that would help. We have shared his image and posters and flyers about kindergarten readiness with private providers and the community. We've showcased him everywhere we can. We have purchased a lovely Ready Freddy costume for every one of our elementary schools so that Freddy could make a personal appearance at every kindergarten or family event at the schools. In fact, one of the principals came up to me this morning and showed me on her phone her last roundup, her kindergarten countdown event that Freddie made an appearance. So I was real proud of her. And so one of the things that we did was we partnered with Casper's McDonald's. That name came up earlier this morning at the panel. They're a great partner to Hillsborough County Public Schools. And we worked with them to create a placemat that will go, if you actually go inside McDonald's and eat dinner and don't just drive through. This was last summer, and we're going to try to get them to do it again this summer, so that it says, can you do this? Can you do this? Can you do this? It's an awareness campaign that's cute and fun, and it hits them where they are, McDonald's. And some of the things parents don't even realize the kids need to do, like the tires. They think about letters, maybe, but maybe not cutting or things like that. So this will give them, while they're munching on their hamburger, some ideas of things that they might need to know or things they might want to work on. So if we could hit them at every place that they are, that would be great. This is an example. I told you I bought a costume for every one of our elementary schools. So they all came together at Raymond James, who's another wonderful partner of ours, for a photo shoot to celebrate kindergarten readiness. Click. So I sit on a committee, and so does Sandy. We sit on a committee with the Early Learning Coalition. Gordon Gillette was one of our panel members, and we have been trying to figure out how to help this kindergarten readiness. And one of the things is getting the kids to show up. Because one of the statistics that we just found was that if a child doesn't miss more than one day per month in kindergarten and first grade, so we're talking just attendance, great attendance, they have a 90% chance of graduating on time. If they show up we can teach them. And if we teach them, they'll learn and they will be ready. So we need to get those kids there. And one of the things they need to do to make that mark is they need to show up on the first day of kindergarten. Okay, so that's one of our little targets, is to try to increase the number of kids that are actually sitting in a seat on the first day. So working with the private providers, we have a little competition out there. The private providers are those that are participating are creating an interactive bulletin board that will reflect which kids are registered for kindergarten and who's not. This came to me from one of our private providers. It's the cutest little thing. And some of these little frogs, there's one for every child, some of them have little flags in their hands, and those are the ones who are registered for kindergarten. So you know all the ones that don't have flags are saying, Mom, Mom, get me registered for kindergarten. We're hoping this will be a motivational thing. So how do the private providers know if the kids are registered? We got bookmarks for all of the children, all of our data processors, the registrars in the schools. When parents come in to register for kindergarten, their child will get an I'm ready for kindergarten, I have registered bookmark. And they're supposed to bring that back to the private provider, and then the private provider will know that they're all set. We also came up with a kindergarten countdown checklist / calendar of things that you can do starting in September, because getting ready for kindergarten, it actually starts at birth. This calendar starts in September, but it is not something that you start thinking about August 5th. It is something they need to be thinking about. So this will help parents start thinking about it and help providers help their parents get ready. And this is just a cover of a calendar it's 64 pages long. The Office of Early Learning released this calendar. It was produced by the Ready Freddy people out of Pittsburgh. And it's got calendars of activities for every month of the year. It's full of great things for kids to do. But if you open this up, I just want you to know, don't hit that print button without realizing it's 64 pages long. Okay, it's a great resource. You might want to print 1 month at a time. And the last thing that I have is, and I'm real excited about this, and it's ever so simple, but I think it's huge. Sometimes the best things come in little packages. So we just acquired this website. And I was so surprised that it wasn't already taken. Signupforkindergarten.com. So I'd ask you, which is easier to find? Signupforkindergarten.com or www.sdhc.k12.fl.us/early childhood/kindergarten. I'm going to go with this one. And we are hoping that this is going to drive a lot of traffic to help parents know what they need for kindergarten, how to do it, and we think this is going to have a great impact. So, thank you.
Thank you, and I'm excited because we are at the end. I'm the closer. So now we are transitioning you to wake up because you've had lunch. And in our last session, I had only a few minutes, but I want to start with this. You are the community. You are the community. We are only few over here. And so what we need is each of you. And I want to start with just talking a little bit about who we are and how we got to where we are. When it comes to transition, it is not necessarily about the children before we talk about who we are. We were challenged as a team. We're not as young as we look. We've been doing this job for a long time. And so when you do a job for a long time, you get set in your ways. You do things the same way that you've always done them, and we thought we were pretty good. Well, now we are expanding. We're being challenged by a lady that's sitting right back there, and she's the assistant superintendent, and she has stretched our thinking. And if you don't know me, you would think that I was probably a quiet person and pretty compliant most of the time. But I'm pretty introspective, and so when someone gives me a challenge, I have to look inwardly first before I can look outwardly to see what am I going to do with other people. And so that's what we've been challenged to do, and I think that we are all getting a passing grade so far, but we still have lots of work to do. That work cannot be completed without each of you. And so before you leave today, there's a camera on. I know where you live. I want to make sure that you engage with us, okay? Can I get you to say yes on that one?
Yes.
I didn't hear everybody. Okay, so how do we facilitate a smooth transition? Thank you for asking. We want to make sure that we have a successful plan. And for me, it is the 3 C's. It is being collaborative, being creative, and being conscientious about what we do. And in order for us to make a difference in what we believe is right for students, I think that that is the one starting point that we can all agree on. We're not here for ourselves. Who are we here for? It's the children and the families that we serve. And that is what makes us we have one goal in mind. If we can keep that one goal in mind, the rest will follow. And I truly believe that. Go back to the opportunities. I'm sorry, Becky. So transitioning to kindergarten provides many opportunities for student, staff, and for our parents. A few examples of that. We have a transition week. Our transition week is planned around our testing schedule. And so a week in May, kindergarten teachers, the pre-K teachers, get together prior to that time. They decide what activities they will select, and that is the time that the children get to visit other classrooms at their school sites. I do see a couple of principals in here as well. And we want to make sure that we continue making that happen. So if we didn't do as good of a job last year, please make sure that you touch base with your folks so that those students know that we're going to be expecting them in kindergarten next year. Information to kindergarten teachers is sent through kindergarten planning form. That was another collaborative between the supervisors so that we all are sending out information and the kindergarten teachers receive something that is useful for them. It's not just what we think they need, it's what we've determined by input that they've said that they need. Other things that happen are workshops, sessions, and events to promote school readiness with our kindergarten students. And we want to make sure that social skills cannot be mentioned enough. Before we can teach them anything, what do they need to know? What are some of the things, Tonina? Yes, the social emotional skills. They need to be able to listen. They need to be able to sit. They need to be able to walk. And our expectations for them needs to be for little people who are growing into what we need them to be. So we have to make sure that we in pre-K are giving them those experiences and preparing them so that when they get to kindergarten, they are going to be ready and the teachers are going to be ready for them. So a couple of the activities that we have pictures are, at the end of the year, there's a skating event that takes place, and it started out very small, but we have standing room only, and now we have to have more than one. But our kindergarten supervisor comes, and I thought I had a picture of her, but she was there with Ready Freddy. It's been the past 3 years, I think, that you guys have been there with us. But the families love it, and what we love is that there are not many places that you can get the dads or the uncles or the granddads. That's a place where they will come because it's fun and it's not intimidating. So we continue the skating, and to the left you will see that there are partners there. That is where they get information regarding school readiness. They get information regarding summer and what's available during the summer. And they have a passport. So the passport gets stamped, they get their skates, and then they're on their way, and they are there until we kind of shoo them out. The last picture on the bottom is one of the things that we do with our families early on. There's a lot of goal setting that goes on. It's not just about the children, it is those parents saying, this is what I would like for my child. This is what we see in my child. And so goal setting happens, and at the end of the year, there's a volunteer reception where those parents who have had at least 25 hours of volunteer time, they're awarded. So they come in, and we want to make sure that we send them off into kindergarten. That's another part of transition. It is the family's transition along with the children. And we want them to be better off when they leave us going into the next phase of their learning. So linking the community. This was the first year that Sandy talked a little bit about the family first engagement. And an example of this new collaborative is an outreach to the community. And I believe she's already given examples of that earlier. And she actually had a testimonial from one of the private providers. One of the things that it reminds me of is the African proverb that it takes a village to raise a child. Well, think about 17,000 kindergartners that enter every year. Are we up to 16,000 kindergartners every year? And of those, we only have, I believe we are at maybe 5% or less, 15%. But the number of students that we have going into kindergarten that we have touched is just a little over 5,000. And so that leaves a lot of children that we have not touched, that some of you may have touched, that are private providers. And that is one of the reasons why we have this big push for us to get together so that we can make sure that we're on the same page. So facilitating meetings, trainings, events for private providers. Head Start in this district is a delegate agency to the Board of County Commission. So there's an automatic connection there for us. There are foundations and there are families at the neighborhood sites that we are collaborating with on a regular basis. And we just want to make sure that we don't leave anybody out, that you guys understand how important it is for us to stay together and for us to move forward. So moving forward, we want to make sure that we have a good media event. We've already talked about the focus, but the media blitz is something that I think Lisa's taking part of the lead with the district, and she keeps us up to date on the websites and where we can go for different information. We all share information and receive information that we share within our little community, but also we're able to post it so that our teachers and classroom staff are able to get it as well. Partnering with the community and organizations such as the library is another way to get the message out. And we know that the most important thing for us in Hillsborough is that we have a family-friendly environment. That is one of the things that has been told to us that we want to continue to work on. Families need to be able to come in and be served and get what they need. And we want to make sure that they're able to do that. And then we have a continuous analysis of data to promote our problem solving, to let us know whether we're hitting the mark, whether we're over the mark, or where we are. And we won't know that unless we have the data collection. And so I am closing. We do have a couple of things up here for you. We also can answer some questions, and I know Lisa wants to make sure that you know that there's a photo op that's ready. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much. Does anyone have any questions?